Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. The Sikh Federation's current strategy to deliver Khalistan relies on the concept of India inevitably breaking up as a natural outcome of both internal and external pressures, somewhat in the same way that the Soviet Union or Yugoslavia did in recent decades. But is this realistic? So I'm joined today by our regular guest, Dr. Gurinder Singh Grewal, who's going to examine this premise, comparing India with the former Soviet Union and scrutinising those parallels between the two colonial empires, and if there is indeed a possibility of India breaking up in the foreseeable future. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us once again today.
Good morning, Angus. Vagji ka khalsa, Vagji ki fateh. So I think it's a good topic to discuss. There are a lot of similarities between both the so-called countries or a country of countries. One has already broken, the other one is on verge of breaking. You know, the Indian economy is failing, and only yesterday some of the people in India was talking that the banks don't have enough cash because the Prime Minister announced that there may be economic emergency coming. So there's a panic. People have withdrawn the money and they're putting the money in their pillowcases or somewhere. So the ATMs don't have enough cash, banks don't have enough cash. And so you can see where India is going. And I think it's timely that we discuss and compare it so we can enlighten our listeners and people who are watching Satluj TV. So let's go to the slide. The physics of a federal state: structure, tension, centralization, and survival in the Soviet Union and modern India. So we're going to compare all those tension points in both these systems. Next. So both massive federal systems face identical structural stress tests across eras, and let's say the Soviet Union, sprawling federal structure of diverse nationalities, ultimately dismantled by centrifugal forces and the regional forces. There's a Soviet Union. You can see that centrifugal forces are trying to break it. And India is also a contemporary federal union navigating immense linguistic, regional, and regional complexities. So both entities grapple with the core challenges of large multinational states, managing the immense pressure between central authority and regional authorities. So both very similarly put together a country of different countries, and the pressure has broken one, and the other one is, I think, getting there. That's survival of a diverse state depends on balancing opposing political forces. Okay, there's a linguistic identity, there's a regional anomaly, and there's a demand for resources and regional autonomy, republic states, and defense and security. So all these are pressure points on the center, and they are unbearable at one stage. Okay. Comparison to one comparison reveals identical fault lines in both models, structure and dimension. First, the Soviet Union in the middle column, India in the last column. Administrative core: strong central government in the Moscow. In India, strong union government in New Delhi. Culture makeup: diverse nationalities, language, and culture. But the Russian language was forced on them. Here also in India, diverse linguistic, religious, and regional communities. They are trying to force Hindi on the southern states, which they reject. The language policy: dominant official language Russian is administration and elite institutions. So this was happening in Soviet Union. In India, Hindi and English dominate many national institutions. English still is used a lot in official work some places, especially courts, by Hindi is being forced on people in the schools like South, like Tamil Nadu. Doesn't matter what party comes, they reject. They reject that Hindi is not their language and they're not going to study. Economic engine, economic planning largely directed from the center. Major fiscal and policy decision influenced by the center. So, security operators, central control over security, defense, and strategic matters. Central control over defense, foreign affairs, and security. It's a much in India is much more than that. You know, if you think what's happening in India, the governor is coming from central government, who is appointed, not elected, and he controls the state. The police, they call IPS, Indian Police Services. They are recruited by the central government and then distributed to the different state. And then there's the administrative services, they call IAS. They are recruited by the central government, then they are distributed. So at every level, the Indian government and the center controls the states. Look at the education system. The governor is the chancellor of universities, like in Punjab. I'm sure probably similar in other states. And who's the governor? Governor is appointed by the prime minister. So education, administration, the police, no bill can pass until the governor signs. Governor only signs the bills which suit the central government. So it's a very highly centralized system. That's why it's failing. It needs to be decentralized. Next. Administrative gravity, centralizing strategic control to bind the union. Strong central government, strong union government in India, absolute central control over security affairs and strategic matters. In India, strict central control over defense, foreign affairs, and key security agencies. It's much more than that, like I just explained previously. Regardless of the constitution of federal nature, both systems ensure the ultimate monopoly on force and diplomacy remains locked at the center. So it doesn't matter whatever is written, they are center decide. Who is in India is the center union, the Home Minister, Amit Shah, and one second, Prime Minister. So those are the center. They decide everything. Recently, what has been exposed in democracy, people elect the government. In India, the government decides who can vote. They're canceling hundreds and thousands of votes they did in Bengal, they'll be doing in Punjab to win. So there's no democracy. People don't vote to elect the government. Government decides who can vote. So it's going in the really wrong direction. Next. Culture entropy, the inherent friction of linguistic and regional diversities. Okay, extremely base reality, extremely diverse national language and culture. This is Soviet Union. In India, similar, immensely diverse linguists, religious and regional communities. Impose center. Here they're imposing Hindi, over there they were imposing Russian. So this is the part of the conflict. Okay, next. The autonomy illusion, gap between constitutional rights and practical power. Soviet Union republics had limited practical autonomy despite sweeping constitutional rights. In India, states have constitutional power, but many key determines power remains safely secured within the union. So, yeah, there is an illusion that states have some rights, but ultimately the centralized system controls everything. Next. Can you focus your slide a little bit?
I think it is focused, certainly from my side.
Okay, better. So, economic friction. The center controls the fiscal engine and resource distribution. Soviet Union economic planning largely directed from the center. This prompted acquisition from some republics of unequal source allocation. In India, planning major fiscal and policy decisions are influenced by the center. They trigger complaint from some states regarding taxation, sources sharing, and federal balance. So diverse regional base. We talked before, like some states contribute 1 rupee and they get 28 cents back. The other states get 2.5 rupee back, and some states get 7 rupees back. So this is the extortion system by the central government. Next. The breaking point, constant friction between regional identities and central authority. Both systems inevitably generate periodic tension. USSR, periodic tension between distinct regional identities and overarching central authority. In India, periodic tension involving regional, linguistic, religious, and state autonomy issues. These tensions are not anomalies, they are the predictive outcome of a strong center operating over a deeply diverse periphery. So it's not anomaly, this is the result of a highly centralized system affecting the states. Next. The physics of multinational states, the simulation, accommodation, and equilibrium. Center is trying to simulate everybody. That's what they did in Soviet Union. In India, what they need to do is accommodation to decentralize, but they're going the wrong way. So state failure occurs when the center over-indexes on simulation, causing the structure to snap. States' survival require constant active calibration to accommodate regional identities without yielding central gravity. What is need to be done? Opposite is happening. So yes. Architecture is destiny. For the massive, diverse federal state, tension is permanent. Survival is not about eliminating regional complaints or centralized absolute power. Survival is the successive engineering of permanent structure tension. So what do they do at the center? Instead of resolving the problem, they are exerting more and more of their authority over the states. India as a crossroads. Soviet echoes federal resilience and the structural stress test, an analytical synthesis based on political framework and the lessons of 1991. So India is going the way Soviet Union went. That's what we're trying to say here. Next. What this analysis is not. So, what I am analyzing is not necessarily a prediction of natural disintegration, an assertion exact equivalence between the Soviet command system and India structured democracy. So, okay. Am I predicting that? Probably I'm not futurist, but based on my analysis, this is going to happen. Because they're very similar. A diagnostic framework uses historical parallels to identify structural friction points, evaluate the current balance, federal and democratic institutions. So the key takeaway is a comparison with the Soviet Union should be understood as analytical framework to highlight important structural similarities and differences, not necessarily as a predictive, but maybe predictive too. Okay, next. Autopsy of a collapse, 1990 framework. That's when the Soviet Union, I think, dismantled. The economic stagnation, chronic inefficiency and resources depletion, regional nationalism, rising distinct identities which constitute republics, institutional mistrust, complete loss of public confidence in official state bodies, over centralization, Moscow's central system entirely unresponsive to local and realities, ideological losses, failure to accommodate diversity, loss of faith in diverse premises. Yeah. So this all led to Soviet collapse. Okay. The state-nation diagnostic matrix. Okay. We have a dimension, then Soviet Union, Indian co-present, and India structure yield. So political economy, command economy stagnation, Soviet Union 1980s, India presently persistent agrarian employment distress, dynamic, highly integrated market economy. So they have a market economy, but it's failing. They just sold gold for $12 billion, according to some reports, but they are denying. Constitution framework, paper-only federalism, debate over centralization in India. The Anandapur Sahib resolution, that was for federal system, and they thought Sikhs were trying to break the union, and whole country turned against the Sikhs. Entrenched legally binding constitution democracy. So yes, they have all those written, but practically there is no federalism. Dissent and opposition. No dissent tolerated Soviet Union, total suppression. Even Khrushchev was removed at one time, remember. Sidelined in India, minority regional voices. What happened recently in Bengal elections? Not only they canceled some votes, won by fraud, now the opposition members of the parliament are joining BJP. You can see how they pressure them, and one day the whole system changes. Active civil society and competitive electoral politics. Yes, it is not there. Federal design. Soviet Union forced assimilation. In India, linguistic regional friction, active state governments with independent mandates. So very similar, and I think this is can be somewhat predictable. Next, go to the next one. Federal balance, stress points, New Delhi, regional voices. Multinational states require a precise equilibrium between national authority and regional autonomy to maintain legitimacy. Okay. The friction point, intensifying concentration of political power at the center. As the federal institution erode, regional voices are increasingly sidelined. Like Kashmir, 500,000 army is controlling the Kashmir. How long can they afford that? Historical lesson. In the USSR, Republic eventually viewed Moscow as entirely unresponsive. Excessive centralization breeds resentment in regions with distinct historical identities. Once, so we can go to next one. Once the Soviet Union broke, Gorbachev tried to bring them together under some new system, but nobody will vote for it, because there was a point where they felt they have the freedom. Why should they go back to similar systems? So this is probably will happen again unless they do something proactively. Once it broke, they won't be able to keep it together. Stress point, alienation of religious minorities. In India, they have anti-conversion laws. The majoritarian narrative, they say everything uniform. God did not make everybody uniform. You and me don't look like together uniform, but there should be equality for everybody. There are the Sikhs, there's the fringe things, Christians, Muslims, state core ideology, equal citizenship. and opportunity, but this is not there. So stress points, they are all trying to annihilate the religion of minorities and making them Hindus. The problem is, Angus, to understand, even if they become Hindus, just for discussion, they don't become equal. They still say marginalize. So what is the incentive for anybody to do that? Next. So stress points, institution credibility. So here are the citizens on the left, their courts, press, elections, agencies, state legitimacy. All these things, courts, press, elections, agencies, is under the control of central government. There's nothing happening there for the people. Democratic stability depends on public confidence in independent bodies. Look, there's no confidence in courts. One young man went from Boston trying to organize the call cockroach party because what the what they realize what the court is doing, what the education system is doing. So the independence of judiciary, press, freedom, and the impartiality of government agencies. Historical lessons. When large groups lose trust in these pillars, everyday disagreements escalate into existential crisis of legitimacy, mirroring the Soviet Union. So this is a good example of this cockroach party. I don't know much more about them, but there is something which 2 crore people, young people, sign online for them. Hopefully, they will be better organized and able to do more. How much government control? Like we talk, 3.5% people can cause a change. They won't have enough handcuffs, jails, or policemen to control them. They just need to organize and come on the street, not on the social media. Next. Stress points, regional linguistic fault lines. We have on the east, the eastern states, they are a lot more Christians, and you can see the Manipur is still going on like a battle line. The people don't mix together. And the southern states do not want Hindi. And then you have a Punjab and Kashmir on the north. So these are all the friction points boiling apart, going to spill over. Linguistic federalism historically saved India from separatist pressures. However, if regional identities feel systematically disadvantaged, demand for autonomy will surge. So they have been able to control by conniving misinformation. I don't remember who the author is, but somebody said, you can fool some of the people some of the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. I think this is happening in India. This Modi government trying to fool everybody all the time. I think it's people are realizing the truth behind the structure. Next. So when Soviet Union broke in 1991, it broke into 15 countries. Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Moldova. In Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. So it broke into 15 countries. Look how they were held together by pressure, but you can only do so long. Next. So this is the map of the India. This is, I think, these are the things can happen. The Kashmir is already India has recognized by converting from state to union territory and occupying with the army. Then we have a Punjab. Punjab is also occupied state. The people of the Punjab do not trust BJP. They're trying to buy people left and right for the next election system. I think they will fail. And then you have a southern states. All southern states have no BJP government, and they reject Hindi as their language. Then you have the eastern state, the green, Manipur, Assam, and all that. One of them actually, China claims to be their territory. Then in the middle, you have the yellow part is Hindutva area. So you can see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 regional areas which are under pressure, and it can blow up anytime. Next. Economic pressures, macro GDP growth, unemployment, agrarian distress. You can see the farmers, farmers' grievances have now been resolved, regional disparities. India is a top global economy, yet faces persistent ground level hurdles that act as a catalyst for their other grievances. It's not a top global economy anymore. I think in per capita GDP is sliding, no foreign investment for second year in a row, widening inequalities, chronic unemployment, and distress in the agrarian sector detached from macro level success. Some of the agreement they're doing with America is going to stress the farm economy even more. Economic hardship rarely shatter a nation alone. People can survive with one meal. However, economic grievances become highly destabilizing when combined with the loss of trust in the political institutions. So it's not only the bad economy, but people are losing trust in the central government. And this centralized government system is not helping India, and it will not be able to keep the country together. I think it is at the stress point where it can explode any day. Next. So the risk and the multiplier factor, economic pressure, regional grievances, declining institutional trust, as like said before. Farm economy is under stress. Alienation is worse by feeling of minority exclusion and over-centralization. Breaking point occurs only when institutional trust fails, removing democratic release valve. Soviet Union did not collapse from one issue. It collapsed because these exact pressure reinforce each other in a closed system. So same thing is happening in India. Some of the Muslim families from north are going to the south because they feel more safer there. So you can see, even in your own country now, you don't feel like you belong there. Next. Core narrative, India's resilience. Why India possesses safeguard against fragmentation the USSR lacked. I don't think all these things are working now. Okay. Continued tradition, 75-year legacy of legal framework and independent courts acting as safeguard against fragmentation. That is probably was keeping it together, but the courts have become highly politicized. One of the demand from this cockroach party is that no judges should be allowed to become members of parliament when they retire, or governors and all that. So all the chief justice, when they retire, they're given lucrative jobs because then they do the government's bidding. That's what was happening in Soviet Union. Justice Kennedy from U.S. Supreme Court retired. He has written his autobiography. It's very interesting. Some Soviet Union judges are visiting U.S. and he's talking to them because he has gone there to exchange programs. And the judges are asking him, tell us how the government tells you to do the decision. He said, no, the government doesn't tell us how to make decisions. They said, no, they don't believe him. They want to know how the US government affects the Supreme Court. And Justice Kennedy is saying, no, we make a decision based on the law. The government doesn't tell, but they don't believe it. This is what is happening in India now. Next. So engineering long-term stability, path forward. There are two choices. Restoring the federal balance, that's what the Anandapur resolution was, protecting minority inclusion, rebuilding institutional credibility, ensuring equitable economic opportunity. National unity cannot be sustained indefinitely through sheer centralization of majoritarian state. Closing inside, the most important lesson from the Soviet Union is not that diverse countries inevitably break apart, but not the state remains stable only when it belongs equally to all citizens. So the lesson to learn from Soviet Union is decentralization works. But who will do decentralization in India? They don't have Gorbachev. I think if they find the Gorbachev is born, they probably will kill him. And I think that is going to be the reason India will break. And unfortunately, we don't see that it will break peacefully. And I hope if it breaks, it break peacefully, like Soviet Union, so millions of people don't get, or hundreds of thousands of people don't die, like in 1947, what happened on both sides. Can somebody in India, is there somebody in India who can save this? Union, I don't see anybody. I don't see any voice coming up to decentralize and save the union. I think this Hindutva lobby has become very powerful and they are in control. But this will also be good for some of the people, even though price may be very high, like for Punjab. It may give us a freedom if they stay a little more in power, because I think they are the reason that everything will be breaking and probably break faster if they stay in power.
Interesting. Thank you, Dr. Grewal. I think to interpret and almost to sort of summarise the situation, there are very clear parallels between the Soviet Union and India, some undeniable parallels. But there are differences, and those differences are potentially the critical factors that will determine the outcome of what happens next. And India, essentially, at least on the face of it, is a democracy. Now, the Hindutva forces are trying essentially to destabilise India, not deliberately, but essentially just as a byproduct of their agenda. Their agenda, which is, it takes many forms, but ultimately they are trying to homogenise India. They're trying to make everybody Indians. They're trying to make them all speak the same language, follow the same flag, etc., etc. That is, of course, coming up against resistance. That resistance is in the form of cultural resistance. Punjab, it's Sikhs fighting back, saying that we don't want to speak Hindi, we want to speak Punjabi, like it was in Tamil Nadu with the Tamils, etc., etc. Now, the Hindutva forces really have a choice then to make, meeting this resistance. They're trying to play a long-term game. They're trying to educate the young, indoctrinate the young, so the next generation of young in all the regions, in the different cultures, grow up as good young Hindu Indians. But that is still being resisted. And the only way they can break that resistance, it actually breaks out into sheer brute force, essentially following a British Empire principle, which is impose it by brute force. Now, the only mechanism that can stop this, that can essentially bring India back from the brink, is democracy. In any normal democratic nation, when a government becomes or takes action that enough people around the nation don't like, they can vote them out. That is the safeguard. That is the word that you used, Dr. Grewal. That is the safeguard that prevents this happening. So I suppose the question really comes down to your and everybody's opinion of India and the practical situation in India, do you think Indian democracy is genuine enough that it can bring the nation back from the brink, as in it will allow somebody to replace this Hindutva-controlled elite of India and replace it with somebody who will create a balanced, equal India for all the different cultures? Or do you think we are now beyond that point? Do you think we are on the path of inevitability, which means it is only going to take one catalytic event and it's all just going to break apart?
So, Angus, I'm going to take a couple more minutes. People think democracy is the only way the best government can be. You know, where did the democracy origin is? It's a Greek, right? City-states. Look at what happened in Greece. Socrates was accused, he was a part of the one who created the system. He is accused by his citizens or people who didn't like him of two crimes. One, he doesn't believe in the same gods we do. Okay. What is the second? He is correcting our youth by asking questions and he's teaching them something we don't want. So those two are the accusation against him. And the city votes. There are 500 people who vote, 220 in his favor and 280 against him. If 30 people voted in his favor, he would not have to drink poison. Okay? So this majoritarian state always do justice? No. Look at the motherland of where the democracy started, how they treated Socrates. So majoritarian rule in democracy can only work if they respect the minorities, they respect their language, they respect their religion. And democracy is supposed to be majority rule with the consent of a minority. What is happening not only in India, many parts of the world, the second part of the sentence, consent of the minority, is disappearing. In India, so that they don't even remember that. So whole constitution suppressed, courts are controlled, money is controlled, corruption is overwhelming system. You know, I was reading somewhere, why do they buy fighter planes from France? Because France does not mind if the companies give bribes to the Adani people. If they buy from US, the US laws prohibit companies bribing even outside the US. So the whole system is corrupt, and I don't see anybody there of any stature who can bring it back them together at the same level as the British left. British left by putting it together in a hurry because of they had to leave. They could not hold it together. Okay, so now I think this even Churchill knew. Churchill did not like Gandhi. He said, "What is he asking for himself? He is not willing to give the same freedom to the people in his own country." He meant the lower class, the class system. You know, he perpetuated the class system. I think this system has, I think, not ripened for disintegration. I don't see anybody. No, people are saying Rahul Gandhi is a good leader or statesman and all that, but I don't think he can do it alone, even if he wants to, because the whole system has degenerated. I think in medicine, you know, if there is a gangrene, sometimes you have to amputate to save the patient. I think to save the states, save the people out there, I think this may be inevitable solution.
Interesting. And before we wrap up, Dr. Grewal, of course, you will be aware of this story that's happened here in the United Kingdom. We had this terrible, tragic story of a young man who was stabbed by a young Sikh gentleman, allegedly with his kirpan. In fact, it wasn't his kirpan, it was another knife that he was carrying. But it has created a huge amount of tension and all sorts of social divisions here in the UK. It's become a huge story, which I know has impacted the diaspora, even internationally. What are your thoughts about this situation? How do you feel it's impacting your community over in the States?
It's affecting everybody with a turban. People are finding excuses to blame the Sikhs. One person made a mistake. I think, first of all, I condemn. I think all Sikhs should condemn. This was wrong and criminal act. Nobody can defend it. Just because one criminal had a turban, that doesn't mean all people with a turban become criminals. I think we have to be rational in thinking. And the other thing is the Sikh bodies, institutions should also emphasize some educational system when they do convey the Paul that these people are trained and well explained what their duties are. Sikh kirpan is a weapon of defense, not killing innocent people. So I think this person has a turban. I don't know the whole circumstances. From what we know, it was something we condemn. And we request the people who are listening also, the non-Sikhs, just because one person with a turban committed a crime, don't think all people with a turban are criminals. I think this is my take on it.
Indeed. Well, we do hope that common sense will prevail right across the Western world about this awful case. Anyway, but there we must leave it. But we will, of course, be talking again with Dr. Grewal soon to continue our discussion. Dr. Grewal, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, Angus. Vaheguru Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ki Fateh.
And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.